Time to start putting the body back together a bit further. I want to put the mirror back in the body. I need to put the cam shaft that runs across there back in the body, and just get the front piece here ready to fit back too. So first of all, I need to get the mirror back in place. Now I'm going to put a couple of spots of glue here and here so that mirror doesn't have a tendency to shift. Occasionally I've found with the reflex models the mirror will just slide forward a little bit, and it'll just be a little bit of extra wear in various places allow it to do that, and then it can scuff against the front of the shutter. I'm not sure it's a problem with this model, it may just be with the other models, the Retina Reflex, but to be on the safe side, I'd rather make sure that this mirror cannot flop around and cause me grief. So I just want to put a couple of little spots of adhesive on here, and I can slide the mirror into place. Now I've had the mirror carefully sitting away in a box out of harm's way. I haven't done anything to it, I haven't attempted to clean it or do anything else to it. I've simply had it parked out of harm's way. We can get it under those clips. That's my first task. That's that. If I slide that back in, it clips into place. I've brought it too far forward, I'm going to have to move that out. I haven't picked up the back clips. Just get a toothpick and give that a nudge from behind. It's under the clips at the front, but it's not under the clips at the back. That's all I need. Check that that's going under those clips. It is on one side, but it's not feeding in on the other. That's better. Now that's in place. That mirror is secure, that's not going to cause me any problems at all. Right, I'll put that aside for a second. Here I have that mirror buffer pad, and I'll bring that out in the light where you can see it, not on that piece of white paper. I've cleaned this. I was able to get all of the greasy marks off that. It was I just used a particularly aggressive solvent to lift it out. It's like a piece of leather, as far as I can tell. It's like chamois leather. I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of this. I've got some here on a piece of paper. That should do nicely. That needs to go in up here. Just get that centered. Just make sure it's pressed down. So that's a nice clean pad now. It was a bit greasy before. Just oils that had, I don't know, I suppose they evaporate from some places in the mechanism and then settle wherever they feel like is going to create the most nuisance, and in this case it would have been there. And that's almost certainly why that front lip of that mirror has got a bit of a cloudy look to it. I'm not going to fight with that. I've learnt in the past that the more you clean a surface silvered mirror, the worse it gets. So we'll just leave that one well alone, I think. Put that to one side. This transfer shaft here needs to go in, this cam. So before I put this in, I'm going to lubricate the surfaces here where the rollers on these arms, control arms, run. And I'll lubricate the gear at the back. I'll use molybdenum paste on here, and I will use synthetic grease on the gear at the back. I'll put a bit of molybdenum paste on the shaft at the front because the small cam here needs to run on that shaft. That's next. I'll start here with the cam, and I'm just going to rub some molybdenum paste around those cam surfaces. Now I notice there's a scribed line across here that someone's made. Certainly wasn't me. It was probably put there to show where this cam should have been fitted. Of course, I'm not sure what that actually lined up with. I just put some synthetic grease on the gear there, on that cam, and it should fit in right about there. I can get that engaged with the gear. I think that's right. That you can see the angle of that horizontal section, that rectangular section on the front of that shaft. You see the angle that sits in. That should be about the right place from the rest position. Now taking my front cam here, I'm just running some molybdenum paste through the centre where it turns on that shaft. And I'll run some around the cam surface at the back here. This is where this latches the mechanism. I'll get that on there, lift that spring-loaded lever up. That should be about right. I think that's the right place. I'm just making sure this is sprung loaded. That all looks good. The front piece here, well, there's not much to do here. I'm just going to run a bit of molybdenum paste on the bottom of that lever that releases this mechanism here. The timing, we'll start with it exactly where it is and then make adjustments as required once I see where everything sits. So I lowered that in at the base, lift that chrome trim up, drop this in a bit, make sure the mirror is a bit depressed, get the cam, the gear on the front of that cam dropped in underneath there. Now the gear's not engaged. I'll put a couple of screws in at the base of the camera body here just to support, keep that in place, and a little bit, and I just want a bit of room to be able to tip this out and align my gears better. I've got to have a look in there and see where everything sits. Almost certainly the timing is not correct yet. Just checking that mirror's free to move. That cam just fell into place there. So the mirror cocking action works. I'll check that again and make sure the capping plate's latching down. Yes. So the timing of my shaft at the back here with the cocking rack is probably correct. The timing of the front gear here with the front of the camera, the gear on the front of the camera, is probably not correct. I've got to check that and see where we're sitting. That didn't roll back as far as I thought it would. Oh, let's have another. I'm willing to be convinced. Yeah, it's not moving far enough forward. I know that wouldn't cock the shutter. So I've got to alter the timing there, hopefully without disturbing too much else. See if that will cock. That almost looks plausible to me. I think that would cock and fire the shutter. So I'm going to put the other two screws in the front here. It's normal to have to spend some time playing around getting the gearing correct. You need to start by getting the gearing correct from the main shaft here and the cocking rack at the back. If that's wrong, then it won't latch down the mirror or the capping plate. It looks okay to me. Alright. Just run those screws down lightly. There are no springs to compress in this camera, unlike the Retina Reflex S. So as long as they're back snug, that's all that matters. And I haven't done them up tight because I may well have to loosen them off and shift things. And I need to find out. Okay, well, I'm fairly optimistic about that, and I think the shutter will probably run. I haven't put any lubricant in this helical yet, so I can do that. I need some helical grease for that. Right, so some helical grease. Well, this is some helical grease. This is Helimax XP optical and instrument helical grease. Now I'm just going to put some on here in about 6 or 7 spots around the outside is probably enough. You don't need to saturate the threads with grease, even that's probably generous. Run that on there. That's moving freely, that's good. Okay, what else needs to go on here? The balls. On this piece here, there were the balls. There was also their flash contact. The flash contact had this silver plated spring and a silver plated flash contact goes on there. That's sprung loaded, make sure it moves freely. The balls were held in place or guided in place with this little brass keeper arrangement. Now this keeper's got a tiny catch folded up on one end. Now that's the lower end from memory. Getting this assembled is always a pain. There's no other way to describe it. It's just trouble. I'll put a bit of synthetic grease in there. And I've got to get the balls down, and they're held in place in those grooves. One either side, of course. And they're just held in place by the grease, really. That looks good. So that part looks like it's ready to go. That's our shutter release. That should be rolled out to the side like that. The post that guides the whole shutter in here runs in this little slot there, so I'm just lubricating that with a bit of molybdenum paste there. The shutter, I need to prepare the shutter, and the preparation I need to do here is put the rear lens group back in place. So I'm just going to clean this with a bit of glass cleaner and screw it into position. I'm cleaning the outside surface first because that's convex and it's easy to tell from the reflections how successful you've been at cleaning it or removing any smears. The inside surface is concave and that's harder to judge. So I usually clean the convex surface first, and then the concave surface, sometimes you need to look through from the other side to judge how well you've done there. Now it's not hard getting everything significant off the lens, but often you're left with smears, and they probably wouldn't affect your photo in the slightest, but they look unsightly, so you want to deal with them. Right, that just screws into the back. That only needs to be finger tight. You do it up as tight as you can with your fingers, that'll be ideal. Now, we come to the part of mating these two things together. Now, the shutter is not cocked. The shutter mechanism here is not cocked. I should be able to get this together. Normally I start by getting the shutter cocking connection here in place. Going to get it over those arrangement of balls on that shaft. And then I've got to get the shutter release seated. Sometimes it's easier to wriggle the post up here, wriggle that thing. Now that went in. So I'm ready to see if this will actually cock now. Now looking there, I can see that that didn't cock all the way. You can see that the diaphragm blades are not fully open. So I've got a timing problem there somewhere. I've got to decide where that timing problem lies. Okay, let me have a wee think about this. I think I'm a tooth out here. In other words, I'm a tooth out of correct timing for the front pinion and the gearing on the front of the camera here. So that means I'm going to have to lift this off and correct that. I'll start by slackening off these 4 screws holding the front of the camera in place. The bottom 2 don't need to be loosened much at all, of course. The top 2 do, because I need to pull the front forward. Let me have a look at that before I do anything rash. No, I don't believe I have got that wrong. It certainly appeared to come all the way across at the top there. That suggests that timing was right. But this timing is not right. It probably means that my pinion on the inside of that front, on the other side of that front plate, is 1 tooth out. So I'm going to have to remove this front and deal with that problem. Well, that was a bit annoying. Never mind, we'll see if I can get this correct. Make sure I know what I'm trying to achieve. I want to rotate this gear one tooth anti-clockwise, I think is what I'm looking for. And I'll put that screw back in there and see if I've done the right thing. Always hard doing reversals. I may have just gone the wrong way. Alright, I'm willing to be convinced. We'll see how we get on with that. Hopefully I haven't moved that too far. Get a couple of screws down in the bottom here, and I've got to get the front gear on the pinion at the front there on the shaft timed correctly with the front of the camera here now. So that's my next task. Get these screws just started at the front, will be about the right place. Now let me see where this sits. Something doesn't want to move. that suggests that something's not correct. I think my mirror, the capping plate's the problem. The capping plate can't come down because it's caught over the top of the lever it's supposed to be sitting under. Very important not to force anything when things don't move, otherwise you'll have trouble. Let's lift this back out, and my capping plate, I want to set that down into the set position at the bottom, so I'll just pull back its little catch. That would have been it. Nothing surer. Get those two screws in. And I hope that I moved that pinion the right direction. As I say, I might have moved it entirely the wrong direction, which won't please me much. It won't be the end of the world. Let's have a look at this now. The mirror moves down correctly. Is that gear meshed? It is now. Where does that sit? I'm at least one tooth out. Try it there. Oh, I'm too far over now. That is gone too far. That failed to complete the advanced stroke. As I say, you don't want to force anything. Let's see where we are. No, I want one more tooth than that. There's a bit of toing and froing here because things are sprung loaded, they pop back. They don't just sit there and wait for you to get things lined up. They'll pop back to the start position and you've got to have another go at it. I think that's it. That looks good. Now the moment of truth. Did I move it the right way or did I move it the wrong way? You can all start laughing in about 30 seconds. Just make sure that the shutter's not cocked. No. Okay, what's going to happen? The wrong way. The wrong way. Oh well. Let's lift off the shutter. Pop that to one side. Take off that and that. Don't want to lose that arrangement. And I went the wrong way. What an annoyance. Right. I was losing track of what was driving and what was driven, and so I moved that gear exactly the wrong way. I forgot that this was the driven and it was driven by what was inside. I reversed that in my mind. Oh well. So I probably need to rotate that clockwise 2 teeth. And we'll try that. Put that screw back in. Bring back the camera body. We'll have another go.